Imagine waking up and finding the entire city destroyed and thousands of people screaming in a panic about finding their family members stuck under collapsed buildings. This is exactly what happened when millions of people were shaken out of their beds at 4 a.m. on the 6th of February. More than 40,000 people lost their lives in the devastating earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria at the beginning of this year. As shocking as it may seem, this was one of the most powerful earthquakes to hit the Eastern world in the last 100 years. But what will happen now? How will Turkey and Syria recover after this massive loss? And is there any hope for all the people that lost their families due to this devastating tragedy? The earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria was listed as one of the deadliest earthquakes the world has seen in the last 25 years. It had a 7.8 magnitude and a depth of 14.9 miles, or around 24 kilometers according to the United States Geological Survey. But what has made this earthquake so deadly? It was the fact that it hit early morning. The number of fatalities might have been slightly lower if the earthquake would have hit later in the day, as victims would have been much faster to react and exit the buildings. What's even worse is that two more powerful aftershocks struck in the following hours after the earthquake hit. The first powerful aftershock was just 11 minutes after the initial incident and had a magnitude of 6.7. And just about 9 hours later, another powerful aftershock, which measured 7.5 in magnitude, hit Turkey and Syria again. This led to more than 5,700 buildings collapsing. But the reason why thousands of people didn't make it wasn't necessarily because they got crushed by the buildings. Many of them sadly experienced an agonizing and slow ending. This is because a lot of people that were stuck under the collapsed buildings were actually alive and didn't suffer any critical injuries. At first, they might have thought they were lucky and just had to wait for rescuers to help them get out of the rubble. But as hours passed and after many attempts of screaming for help, only a few were lucky to be saved from the rubble. And as the sun set and the temperature started to go below freezing, the people stuck under these buildings began to understand that getting rescued was going to take longer than they thought. So trying to keep themselves alive was literally going to be one of the hardest challenges they would ever face in life. The lack of water wasn't the first thing that would kill the victims stuck onto the rubble. It was actually hypothermia. The freezing temperatures Turkey and Syria faced during the first days of the earthquake led to many people passing away due to their bodies not being able to withstand the cold. In addition, aftershocks continued rocking the ground for days after the initial quake, making it difficult for rescuers to reach survivors without causing damage. Unfortunately, the long-term survival rate for victims who have been trapped by rubble is about 10%. This means that out of every 10 people buried in an earthquake, only one is likely to survive. Asphyxiation is a major concern when victims are buried under piles of debris. In some cases, they may be able to breathe in the first hours after being buried, but as time goes by, the amount of oxygen diminishes and carbon dioxide increases in their environment, causing suffocation. In addition to the lack of oxygen, there are other risks associated with being trapped under the rubble. Apart from the lack of water, thousands of people that were stuck couldn't make it due to the exposure to toxic gases from decaying other people that had already lost their lives when the buildings collapsed. Even though rescuers did their best to save the lives of those stuck under rubble, there were still a large number of casualties that happened because of these and other life-threatening factors. Earthquakes happen because of the movement of the tectonic plates. These plates are huge slabs of rock that make up the Earth's surface. They float on top of a layer of molten rock that's around about 2,900 miles or 4,667 kilometers thick. The plates are constantly moving, averaging about an inch per year. Most earthquakes occur along plate boundaries where one plate slides past another. The plates can also get stuck and build up stress before they break free again in an earthquake. Earthquakes are actually the result of all this stress accumulating in the crust until it can no longer be contained. The stresses can be caused by many things, including volcanic eruptions, landslides, and even the slow movement of the tectonic plates. The most familiar way to describe an earthquake is by its magnitude. The The Richter scale was invented in 1935 by Charles Richter and is still used today as a quick way to determine the size of an earthquake. It assigns each earthquake a number between 1 and 10, with 10 being the biggest, most powerful quake ever recorded. The Richter scale is logarithmic, which means that each step up represents a tenfold increase in power. For example, a magnitude of 3 is 100 times more powerful than an earthquake with a magnitude of 2. The 7.8 earthquake that struck Turkey and Syria is 10,000 times more powerful than a magnitude of 3. This doesn't mean that all magnitude 7.8 earthquakes are equally devastating. While the strongest must rank among the most destructive natural disasters in recorded history, there are also cases where a magnitude 7.8 earthquake caused little or no damage at all. But according to the United States Geological Survey, in most cases, a magnitude of 7.8 or 8 earthquake is capable of causing catastrophic damage in populated areas. Because there are no living examples of earthquakes greater than 9.5, scientists have created models based on historical data and other sources to predict what might happen during such events. According to these models, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake would cause severe damage in populated areas, while a 9.5 magnitude earthquake was to result in widespread destruction across all structures and infrastructure within 7 kilometers of its epicenter. Powerful earthquakes like the one that hit Turkey and Syria are extremely fatal, and the most devastating thing about them is they cannot be prevented or predicted. But what will happen to the survivors that lost their homes due to the earthquake? Where will they seek shelter? The answer is that their government might start building new neighbourhood projects to be able to house all the survivors. But this might take months or even years. For the first few months, survivors must seek help from their family members that have a safe home to live in. But only a few were so lucky as to find such accommodation. Tens of thousands of survivors were left with no choice but to sleep in cramped camps and live with the donations that were sent to Turkey and Syria to help them recover from the tragedy. Even though these camps provide food, water and shelter, they're still not a great place for the survivors to spend months in. One of the reasons is that temperatures are low, so people need multiple blankets and clothing to keep warm. Many of these camps also don't have bathrooms, so the only way survivors to get released is to do it in the surrounding area of the camp. Not only does this cause a horribly strong smell, but it can also cause infections and even risk the lives of these survivors. The only thing the world can do now is to continue to donate and be able to increase the chances for these survivors to get back on their feet again. There are many reputable organisations helping with the earthquake relief efforts in Turkey and Syria, so we've compiled a list of the best ones. Doctors Without Borders is now treating some of the injured at its hospital in the area where the earthquake struck. The organisation has launched an emergency appeal that has already raised more than $3 million. The Syrian American Medical Society is also a non-profit organisation with physicians, nurses, dentists and healthcare professionals that are providing medical assistance to the Syrians affected by the earthquake. The BU Turkish Student Association is another organisation that is now focusing to raise $5 million to help the ones affected by the earthquake with hot meals, shelter, warm clothing and other basic necessities. All the organisations are listed with links down below. Even the smallest donation will make a huge difference to both Syria and Turkey. Be sure to share this video to spread more awareness and hit the like and subscribe button for more up-to-date topics.